Welcome back to Voices of the Regenerative Decade here on One Earth Live. I'd like to welcome our next guest, John Liu from Ecosystem Restoration Camps. John is a filmmaker, environmental educator, speaker, and writer who in the mid-1990s documented the ecological rehabilitation of the Loess Plateau in China. Since learning that it is possible to rehabilitate large-scale damaged ecosystems, John has devoted his life to understanding and communicating about the potential and responsibility to restore degraded landscapes on a planetary scale. So it's great to have you with us today, John. Thank you for joining us on Voices of the Regenerative Decade.
Thank you very much.
I'd love you to introduce yourself and your work in the regenerative movement and just let us know a little bit about what you've been up to.
All right. Well, about almost 30 years ago, I started to study ecology and was introduced to the cradle of Chinese civilization by the World Bank, which asked me to film a baseline study. And what I found was that the cradle of Chinese civilization was a desert. And I couldn't understand how the largest ethnic group on the planet came from such a degraded landscape. And then as I followed the restoration project, I realized that it was possible to rehabilitate these historically degraded lands. Since then, I've had many fellowships with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature and a number of universities and research institutes. And I've been all over the world looking at this, and I found that everywhere where we try to do restoration, that we have a positive impact, and that we can begin to understand why we are degrading landscapes. We're degrading landscapes because we value things higher than life itself. And when we do that, we create a perverse incentive to degrade the earth systems. And the ecosystem restoration camps idea was how to bring everyone in the world to participate in what I call the great work of our time to restore ecological function on a planetary scale. And this looks like it's the new economy. It's the new way forward that is sustainable and circular and humane and fair. So this seems like something worth doing, and it's been a lot of fun as well.
Thanks, John. And I'm wondering, what is your perspective on how we can succeed in regenerating our planet in the next decade?
Well, I'm not sure we can succeed in the next decade, but we can certainly make a start. And what we have to do is understand that there are principles, and these principles are evolutionary, and we understand them. That in evolutionary succession, there's always more biodiversity, always more biomass, and always more accumulated organic material. And these are the basis of these are functional. They're the processes which regulate the climate, which control the surface temperatures, and which create the oxygenated atmosphere, the freshwater system, and the fertile soils. So understanding this seems to be the next step in human understanding. We've muddled along believing that the things we made were more valuable than the natural earth systems, but the earth systems give us life, and they're much more valuable, much more important. And if we don't learn how to manifest functional ecosystems, then we're going to pay serious consequences for this.
Agreed. And I mean, some would say at this time, John, in this great pause that we're in currently, that this is an opportunity for us to find our place back in the web of life, or back in harmony with our systems. I'm wondering if you have any reflections upon the opportunity that's at hand right now, within I guess the potential, the regenerative potential right now.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that there's, the purpose of life is not to go shopping. The purpose of life is to understand the meaning of life, to enjoy life, and to ensure that future generations will have the same opportunity. So what we see now is that in ecosystem restoration camps, you have a methodology in which every single person on the planet can learn and participate, not only in restoring the ecological systems, but also in finding how to have a peaceful, harmonic relationship with other people. So we've been competing with everyone, but we really need to collaborate with everyone. We are a meta organism, not simply individuals. And we need to understand that not only every living human being is related to us, but we're related to all living things. And we live in symbiosis with all the other living things. So it's necessary for us to understand this and to learn what it means. And then we can go forward, because there's really nothing wrong with the earth. The problem is with human beings. And the risk is not to the earth, it's to human beings and to human civilization.
And John, what do you think listeners can do to actually be a part of the movement of regeneration in their own lives? What actions can they take at this point in time?
Well, we recommend that everybody join the ecosystem restoration camps movement, because joining the ecosystem restoration camps movement allows to assist ecological restoration, ecosystem restoration camps all over the world. So we have now 23 camps in all continents, and 6 different continents. So there will be more. And as this grows, it allows more and more people to train and more people to act to do restoration. And when we reach critical mass, then we'll be massively improving the Earth's natural ecological systems rather than degrading them. So I think that you can go to ecosystemrestorationcamps.org and you can learn about the different camps. You can find camps that are based in urban areas, camps that are in rural areas. As I said, in Africa, South America, and Europe, and North America, and Asia. So gradually, as we grow this movement, one of the things that we realized was that we can't do this alone. The only way to do this is if we all do this together. So what I've been hoping for and seeing happen is that we're starting to have exponential growth. So we've been having exponential growth in camps now for about a year, and now we're starting to see exponential growth in the supporting membership. So if the membership goes to, let's say, 1 million or more people, then this will be a huge, huge impact on restoration around the world.
And John, could you tell us a little bit more about the work on the ecosystem restoration camps and the importance of the ecosystem restoration camps within the regenerative movement, particularly?
Well, I think that what we see is there's quite a lot of focus on regenerative agriculture, but there's not that much understanding about the natural ecological systems. And this is because we've often thought that we needed to focus on growing more food. Otherwise, we would starve. But the reality is that the productivity is determined by the ecological function. So there are primary systems, which are the ecological systems: soil, fertility, microbial, fungal communities in the soils, the freshwater systems, which include the lower hydrological cycle and the global hydrological cycles, which recycle moisture. And when we break those, we get droughts and floods and wildfires and so on. So what we need to do is people have become so separated from nature, living in tall buildings and riding in vehicles and not being outside so much. So they don't necessarily understand how these things work, but how can they get this understanding, and how can we do this for everyone? And that's ecosystem restoration camps, because we can all go, we can work together, we can make a difference, and we can all make sure that we learn this and that we pass this on to future generations as well. So this means by going camping, that's the only conversation in town, is how to do restoration.
I understand you're currently actually at a restoration camp. John, would you tell us a little bit about where you are right now and what's happening there, and any other particular camps that you'd like to highlight in the work that they're doing?
Well, there are camps all over the world. This one is Hatlam, Camp Hatlam on Mount Shasta. So it's right on the foothills of Mount Shasta. And this area has a kind of a sad history in many ways, because the native population was massacred, really. There are some historical records show that about 30 women survived and were basically sold as slaves. And then there were 4 couples who survived and fled, but most of the people died. And then the people who came in and took this area from the indigenous people, they massively logged this. So this is right next to a town that was named for Abner Weed. And this man built a huge sawmill. And now if you look at the types of trees that they're milling compared to the types of the trees that they were milling then, the size is 10 times smaller. So this area has been, we were trying to figure it out, whether this has been logged 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times since the Native Americans were moved off of here. But it's pretty seriously degraded, and it's a big fire risk. So what Hatlam is doing is working on really understanding reforestation and bringing back not only for timber, but for ecological function, because this is the best water in the world. You can drink the water directly out of the ground. It's wonderful, but it's massively degraded. And in order to save this and to enlarge this area, we can teach a very large number of people about this here at the Hatlam camp. And then we can continue, because you can see all the hills in the background. They're also denuded. So there's thousands and probably millions of acres to restore here. In terms of other camps, if you're interested, one camp that I'm very happy to have had a role in bringing into the group is Sekhem in Egypt. It's a community actually that's been there for 43 years now, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful place that is converting desert into functional landscapes, and that is created communities that are caring for all sorts of people. They have secondary and primary schools, secondary schools, special education, vocational training, and even a university. So they're studying and learning how to restore deserts, and we're working on a very large project in Egypt with them now. But as I said, there are many, many, many camps.
Wonderful. Thanks, John. Some of the conversations we've had have been around, I guess, finding one's inner regenerative landscape to be able to take part in an outer regenerative movement. And I'm just wondering if you had anything you'd like to say around that, of what it means to actually find that within yourself to be able to be that in the world.
Well, I, I think there's a lot of anxiety now with with the virus and with the collapse of the existing economic systems and with the political corruption that seems to be so enormous right now. And what's interesting about doing restoration is there's a feeling that it's something that we can trust and believe in. Its meaning, it gives our life meaning and purpose to do restoration. And I mean, if we're trying to buy and sell things or outcompete other people or control the lives of other people, it really doesn't have any satisfaction. So you can do it. I was thinking the other day, like if you're in the rat race and you win, well, you're still a rat. And maybe it's better, if we do restoration, we realize who we are, that we're human beings and we're supposed to live in this beautiful earth that we have, rather than we're here to make things and buy and sell things.
And what is the best ways you think we can find ourselves back in within the web of life where we should be? And how is this regenerative movement a movement in that direction?
Well, I can only speak personally, but I was a journalist before I started to study ecology. And I noticed that in my mind, I had quite a lot on my mind. As a journalist, there were stories coming and going, and it was very confusing. But when I started to study ecology, things became more clear. You can see things which are fundamentally true. And it's not exactly relative. It's not my opinion that organic material or microbiologic communities or fungal communities are related to the symbiotic relationships with other plants or the nutrient cycling. And that's just fundamentally true. So that is so comforting and it makes the mind go quiet. And I think that's a very important thing for everyone to, live and know why we're living, because we only live for a short time. So we need to have a lot of fun with that.
Speaking of that, John, what kind of legacy would you like to leave in your lifetime?
Well, I guess it's quite useful to expand the sum of human knowledge. And so what I've been looking at and studying and observing and communicating about is the shift that we need to make if civilization is going to survive. So if this is successful, then I'm going to be very happy. If it's not, then I think my children, my children's children, they're going to have a very difficult time. So I really hope that we'll look back at this time and say, okay, that was the moment when they understood and they left all this sort of less important activity and worked on the great work of our time.
And speaking of the great work of our time, John, if you can zoom forward to 2040, we're in 2020 right now, and I guess see best case scenario if the great work of our time has been taken seriously. What can you envision best case scenario?
Well, I think what we have to see is that when we are doing restoration, it's real work and that it's real valuable work. So instead of having ecological function be 0 and plastic gewgaws shipped around the world to end up in trash heaps all over the place, filling the oceans, seemingly to be valuable or more valuable than ecosystem function. I mean, this is just false. So we need to change our economy so that our economy incentivizes people to do restoration, and that completely discourages, totally discourages people. Now we have an economy that creates a perverse incentive for people to degrade the landscape. But we need to have an economy which only incentivizes them to do restoration and discourages anyone from doing anything which will any pollution or disrupt the hydrological cycle or lower soil fertility or biodiversity on the planet. So I think in the future, if we have this understanding and we make these choices, our economy will be different, our actions will be different, and our stress levels will be different. We'll be having a lot more fun, and we'll be doing what needs to be done, and we'll be taking care of everyone instead of thinking, let's act as selfishly as we can to gather as much material possessions for ourselves, and good luck to everyone else.
John, what do you think is the importance of Indigenous land stewardship or Indigenous wisdom within the regenerative movement?
Well, I think it's absolutely crucial that we recognize that the dominant cultural paradigm, the dominant economic system did not come from the indigenous people, and that indigenous people in all parts of the world protected the huge forests, the wonderful grasslands, the wetlands, the oceans, the huge megafauna all over the world. And it was this expansion of the, unfortunately, Judeo-Christian Islamic world that spread the concept of materialism and materialistic civilization around the world. And it did that by committing genocide against the local populations, or enslaving them, or co-opting them, and conquering them, and saying, colonizing them, and saying, okay, now we stole your land and it's ours. And that it's not a very good logic to say I stole it and it's mine. That's a terrible idea. And it would be crucial now to recognize that when you do such things as colonize or commit genocide or slavery, nobody wins. It isn't the conquerors win something. Everybody loses, because this is the knowledge that's been built up over all of human history about what is the meaning of life, and how do we live in harmony with other species and with integrity on the earth. And so much of that is gone, and it's important to honor what the indigenous people all over the world did to protect the earth, and to bring them back into the councils of what are we going to do? What are we here for? Why are we here? What are we doing? They have equal rights, and we need to listen to them. So I think it's going to be crucial to have their voice at the table.
Agreed. Thank you, John. And we're coming to the end of our time together. I'm wondering, do you have any final wisdom on how we can best find our place living in harmony with our earth as part of this regenerative movement, I guess you could say? Any pointers for how people can find their place back within the web of life?
Well, I think that we need to realize that there is some grief and grieving that needs to take place. We need to understand and experience this. The levels of degradation are profound. And then on the other side of that, you have great joy and great beauty in nature. And it's in that perfection that nature has, always adapting, always working for the best interest of life, not selfishly, but in a co-evolving and symbiotic way with all other living things. And this, when we understand that, when we can live that way, then we are part of nature. We are part of the web of life. And that's where we're supposed to be. We've just gone off the track a long time ago, and we need to get back on track now.
John, if the earth could speak, what do you think she would say to us?
I think the earth is speaking. I think that I can hear the winds blowing here. I can feel the temperature changes. I can hear the amazing biodiversity, the insects, the pollinators. There are even bears here. I think there are more bears here than people where I am. But it's, I think the earth is always talking. I think we haven't been listening. And so we need to quieten our minds, and we need to look closely at nature, and then we have to hear. So we have to listen. So the earth is talking to us, but we have been ignoring it for a long time.
Thank you, John. Well, I'm going to show a short video at the end of this segment, but just to close, any final words, or would you like to let people know where they can find out more about your work?
Well, I have an academia page. It's the URL is knaw.academia.edu/John D Liu, all one word. And then ecosystemrestorationcamps.org is there. And I'm also the ecosystem ambassador for the Common Land Foundation. So you can go to commonland.com and learn about Common Land's work. Common Land has about 2 million hectares already in privately invested restoration around the world.
Thanks, John. And any final words to our viewers?
Well, I hope everybody's safe, and your families and everyone are not too badly affected by this virus pandemic. And I hope that coming out of this, we're not going to rush back to business as usual, but we're going to build a new way forward that will make sure that we restore the earth to its fully functional state, and that we stop the kind of selfish and ignorant activity that humans have been involved in for such a long time.
Wonderful. Well, John Liu, thank you so much for your time with us today. It's a privilege to be able to speak with you. We appreciate all of the amazing work you're doing out in the world in the regenerative movement. I'm Becca Dakini, your host here at Voices of the Regenerative Decade as part of One Earth Live. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And thanks again, John, for being with us today.
Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, my name's John Liu, and I founded the Ecosystem Restoration Camps movement. We've been growing from 1 camp to 2 camps to 23 camps. And it's important because over long historical time, human beings have massively altered the Earth's natural ecosystem function. And we've lost touch with where our air and our water come from. And we need to make this right. So this is the great work of our time, and we can have fun while we're doing it. This fits perfectly with the festival and event concept because it's entertaining and it's educational and it's great fun. So check out the ecosystem restoration camps. Become a member of the ecosystem restoration camps. Start ecosystem restoration camps. And let's have festivals at all the camps. Thank you very much.